Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful in oil country and around the world. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal. I'm here tonight with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. 5-3 Oilers win. The game never felt close, I have to say. Vancouver is back on their heels, I think, for the rest of this season, and
The duration.
the duration. Lost their best player earlier on, hit by COVID, and they did manage to get more grade A chances, 9-8, than the Oilers, but this never really had the feeling of a game that the Oilers couldn't turn it on at any time and take the lead if they needed to, which is exactly what they did. Bruce, this is our two good things, two bad things, and two numbers podcast, and we'll go with two good things each because there's a couple obvious ones. Let's start out with those. Go ahead.
My good thing number one, going to the playoffs, baby. Big night when you get to clinch your playoff berth. All the nicer when you clinch it as opposed to getting it clinched for you because somebody else lost the game on your day off or something like that. And in this case, the only team mathematically that could touch Edmonton was Vancouver, a very, very distant bell that would have required an 11-game Vancouver winning streak and a 0-7-0 finish for the Oilers. But until that I is dotted and that T is crossed, that X does not appear in the standings. So they dotted their I's and crossed their T's, and you and I crossed our eyes watching the game. That was probably not a real thriller, but it was mission accomplished, and it's mission number one at the beginning of every season. Make the playoffs, make it to the dance, get in there, you got a chance. And it's something that we've only seen. Well, depending on what you think about last year, and some people debate whether the Oilers really made the playoffs last year, I credit them with the playoffs because they were a playoff team all year, and they got,
I do too.
as we know, things went crazy, but all those stats counted as playoff stats. But even at that, this is only 3 times in 15 years, and it wasn't quite the pulsating finish. Man, they played on the radio, David, just before the game started, of Jack Michaels calling the game that Edmonton made the playoffs in 2017, where they beat LA Kings 2-1 on home ice to clinch. And it was a couple of weeks to go, so it wasn't like super pressure, but it was, it was the team that had tormented us for years, and that I happened to be at that game, and it was just a furious finish. I think Talbot made like 5 saves in the last minute or something, and Jack Michaels was just going crazy, and the crowd was roaring. It brought a tear to my eye, honestly.
All we're missing out on it.
Hockey. This was hockey, right? Being there, being at the game, experiencing that pulsating, thrilling finish that was that game, and as many games. It is a pulsating, thrilling game at its best. And to hear that, and they said this is the last time Edmonton won a game to make the playoffs, because last year, of course, they never got near mathematical clinching when all of a sudden the season was over, and then it was down to figuring out in the boardroom who was in and how it was going to work and how they were going to hose the Oilers. And we all know how that ended up. And anyway, this year they won their way in, and they took care of business just enough. It was not a great game, and it was not a super classic performance by the Oilers, who did allow a late goal to make it close, but they held on for the 5-3 win with the late empty netter to salt it away, and here we are. We can now officially start talking about doing what's best for the team in preparation for the playoffs, with that X in the standings that Dave Tippett used as a big motivator for his team today, and I dare say they didn't need his help too. They wanted to get it done, and they got it done.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of heartbreaking to think about Oilers in the playoffs, especially if they go on a run without fans too, Bruce. And I mean, it's just, I just don't have to. We don't have to talk about how heartbreaking this whole pandemic and lockdown has been. It's just been endless and frustrating and sad, and people have lost a lot, and in big, very big ways, and in smaller ways as well.
It's
The
flat
Oilers.
screen world now, David, and that's where we get our hockey fix these days. It's
Yeah,
all on the big flat screen and all the high definition in the world. It's not the same as being there, and it's even not the same as watching on TV when there are fans in the rink, but it's still hockey, and
yeah.
mostly it's good hockey.
I miss them going, the fans going crazy. I hardly ever go to the game, so that's what I miss. It's just, anyway, it is what it is, as we say, and as we've said for some
Yes.
time. Bruce, it's easy to just be almost complacent about the Oilers making the playoffs this year. It's been telegraphed for some time,
Mhm.
but as you can recall, we had a weak start to the year, and many people were doubting the Oilers at that time. Many people before the season didn't think this was a playoff team and that they'd be battling it right to the end. I think I predicted they'd finish first, so I was incorrect about that, based on their winning percentage of this year, last year, and their strength of the team heading into this year. I thought they were a better team, but and they have become a better team this year. All kinds of great things have happened on this team this year. Improvements of numerous players, and they're big players. McDavid, Nurse, Draisaitl coming up big, and Mike Smith as well. It's been a fantastic year for an Oilers hockey fan. And you know, if I have two wishes left, it is for two things: success in the playoffs, but also at some point, fans in the stands during the playoffs. And it seems like a faint hope now, but I still have my fingers crossed. Bruce, my good thing is my first one is Connor McDavid, and the his whole thing about getting to 100 points is starting to seem very, very real. 4 point night. He now has 91 points in 50 games. He needs 9 points in his final 6 games, which for McDavid is obviously entirely doable. And he doesn't even like the whole worry that he's going to have to strain himself and break his back and get worn down in some desperate push to get 100 points doesn't seem like that might have to happen either after a night like that. I mean, if he has one more big explosive
Mm-hmm.
night, it's pretty much going to be a done deal. Tonight he was very good tonight. You know, not he wasn't he it wasn't his 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 game, but it was an 8 out of 10 game probably. That's funny to say about a guy who put up 4 points. He makes a beautiful cross seam pass to Jesse Puljujarvi on the first goal. He drills a shot towards net on the second goal, which Puljujarvi knocks down over to Barry into the net. He totally handcuffs Braden Holtby on the third goal with barging in there and ripping his usual hard shot. He's become better at beating goalies. And we had that rated as a B chance. But when McDavid's shooting it now, he's doing all these little things, making it difficult for the goalies. And, you know, the goalie thought he should have made that save, obviously. Fans, I thought he should have made that save. He was beating himself up. But when McDavid's shooting that puck, Bruce, dangerous things happen. And then then we had the twist of fate of the Canucks getting a late goal. And of course, the thought that occurred to a million Oilers fans at that very moment is, oh, good, they're going to pull their goalie and McDavid can get another point. And that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what happened. So that's the story of his 4 point night.
Yeah, he got the empty netter on a pretty slick play from his empty net line mates there, Archibald and Draisaitl to seal the deal. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a bit, though. But yeah, that I hadn't taken in, David, that you'd scored that as a B chance. But to me, I'm going to upgrade that to an A, the McDavid goal, because of the clash of sticks right when he shot the puck. It was deflected at the source, and that's what gave Miller so much trouble. So it was one of those shots the goalie can't read it when the two sticks together come and the puck flies and it either hits the goalie or it hits a hole, and that one just squeezed under his arm of his catching side and dribbled over the line. But it was to my way of thinking, that would be definitely be a grade A
All right, I've
scoring
changed
chance.
it all.
Okay. So make it
Changed it
nine,
already
make it
as we
9 to
speak.
9, make it 9 to 9 then, because
And
yeah,
and for
that
people who
was
don't know how our scoring chance system works, I usually do the grades, the initial run through of awarding the marks, and then Bruce reviews it, and we have a discussion sometimes if there's a disagreement where we go back and forth and we debate it. And but in the end, because we want to try to control for my bias, whatever bias I have, we have Bruce's bias. Uh, Two people balancing
yeah.
each other out and discussing things. I think the discussion is actually the most important thing. But it's also, I think, good to have, two different people with
Oh
two different
sure.
views of the slightly different views of the game, sorting it out. So that's how we try to get it at more fair and accurate. So it's just not one person's domain. It's I think a bona fide effort, and we also publish them, so you can look at our results, and which is another important way that our results can be verified and checked out by other people. Bruce, what's your second good thing?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the second line of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at center, between Dominic Cahoon and Tyler Yamamoto. I thought they had an outstanding game today. Slightly spoiled by the goal against right towards the end of the game, off a face-off play, but they were in dominant form throughout much of their time together, and it was because they were so strong on the puck. They were just all over the puck. They were buzz saws. Yamamoto, I mean, he made a number of great plays to win possession and to move the puck along. He didn't have any shots himself, Yamamoto, but he was starting a lot of plays, and Nugent Hopkins and Cahoon had 4 shots each. And Nuge, I mean, he must have seemed like he had 4 grade A chances on his own, because um, uh, netminder for Vancouver, Braden Holtby, made a number of just excellent stops on him, right in stone cold edge of the crease kind of thing. And Cahoon had a real jump in his step tonight, and I just thought they were active on the puck. And I think probably this was, especially compared to what we've seen lately, Montreal, Calgary, this was a pretty aphysical game.
Yeah,
And, Vancouver is, I'm not going to say they're mailing it in, but I mean, they would be insane to be putting in an intense physical effort, because they still have 10 more games after this one in like 2 weeks. Their schedule is just brutal. And so, they gave an honest effort tonight. Do not take me the wrong way. I admired Vancouver. I thought they hung in a game they easily could have bailed. But uh, they're down so many players. They're down something like 8 forwards. I mean, their whole bottom six was gone, right? All those guys from Brandon Sutter to Jay Beagle to Muttley Mott there, Tyler Mott.
Roussel,
And yeah, Dominic Roussel, didn't miss him.
Antoine
But
Roussel. Yeah, I'm
Vancouver,
glad he's not there.
Antoine Roussel, Dominic was the goalie. Antoine Roussel, the French international, that has a little bit of a reputation for Weasley play. And
Just a bit.
yeah, yeah, he's the Canucks' modern equivalent of Alexander Burrows. That's Roussel. Anyway, they're missing all those guys. Like, anytime you're playing Vancouver, you always have these pack of dogs that they sick on you in the bottom six, and they're all getting paid, overpaid. But they're half decent at their roles. But those guys were gone. I didn't recognize a couple of Canucks, and it was just um, sort of a motley crew that they put together. And so anyway, the line was all over them, and the play that I particularly enjoyed, of course, was the goal that they scored, killer goal, and turned out to be the game-winning goal. Last minute of the second period, it was three. Oilers had made it 3-1. McDavid. Canucks had bounced back with a goal by JT Miller to make it 3-2, and looked like they were going to go to the room that way, especially after Vancouver killed off the last shift of the big line. Oilers' big line had scored all 3 of their goals to that point. And instead, in the last 30, 40 seconds of the middle frame, let me see now, 1915. Uh, Real nice four-way passing play where again Yamamoto started it, and he didn't even get a point, but he moved it to Nugent Hopkins. He made a nice quick feed to Dmitry Kulikov, who sent a lovely cross seam pass right across to Dominic Cahoon. And my favorite part of that play, if you roll the tape, how you'll say, back it up, roll the tape. Back it all the way up to the line change where Draisaitl at the end of his long shift is kind of cruising to the bench, and he's about 20, 25 feet from the bench, and Cahoon is already there with one leg over the boards. And Draisaitl goes off screen, and Cahoon jumps on the ice, and you know that he's like 2 seconds easy before Draisaitl is going to get to the bench, and Cahoon's out there. And because he was so quick on the change, he was able to jump into the hole in the open ice, and nobody was covering, right? And he wound up with a clean shot, and he buried it. But that was a hustle play right from the bench to the slot to the net. So that's really what all three of those guys were doing, was hustling and winning their share of battles. So
yeah, one of the prettiest goals of the year, and all the more so on a certain level because
nice.
McDavid, Draisaitl, and Barrie, they're three elite passers. Other elite passers other than Nuge weren't in on it, but those are all highly skilled players. Kulikov, not known as that, but the other three certainly are, and it was great to see Cahoon drain it too. And Nuge's back pass was very sweet as well. But Yamamoto, like he was probably the key to that whole thing, and he didn't even get an assist. That's how it works.
Right.
But you know what? He was credited with a plus in our system, Bruce.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And a plus on official goals plus minus. My second good thing was the play of Jesse Puljujarvi. And Puljujarvi is not just looking like he might be a top line forward, Bruce. In that game, he looked like he was a top line forward. He looked like he was a top line forward, just playing with confidence and some fierceness that you see from players in that position, the kind of confidence and swagger and battling where he's not gonna back down to anyone. And the moment I thought, oh, he's my good thing, wasn't his great play on the first goal where he absolutely drained a shot. The kind of goal he's got to start scoring regularly if he's going to play regularly with Connor McDavid. He's got to drain those shots, and he did. But it's
sure did.
Later in that first period, he gets the puck and he puck protects it real hard, and he uses his, I think he's called it, or someone called it, his big butt, the Puljujarvi big butt, and he slammed into Horvat and knocked Bo Horvat off his feet, which is no easy feat. Bo Horvat is a hell of a hockey player and very strong on his skates. He's Ryan Kessler without the constant excessive fouling. So I love that one. And on the second goal, McDavid shoots it in, and Puljujarvi's again jousting for position and manages to win the battle and put it over to Tyson Barrie on the second goal. He's Louis DeBrusk mentioned this battle, his battle with Edler in front of the net, where Puljujarvi got very nasty and didn't take any guff and just knocked the Swedish boxing champion off his feet.
Edler is a wily, tough
hombre.
Yeah, veteran. He's been through the wars for a lot of years, and I've never known him as being a guy to back down. But Puljujarvi got the better of him, just like he got the better of Mark Giordano in the corner on Saturday night. Another play which I loved. It just ran over one of these veteran NHL defensemen that are supposed to be treated with respect, and he didn't respect Giordano at all, nor Edler. And I love it because that's how you're going to break through in this league. You just got to stop taking guff from them and start giving them a little bit back at least. And Jesse's dishing it out, man. I'm really liking his battle level is fantastic, I think.
And there's been so many great storylines of the year, but the Puljujarvi story, it's up there with Mike. It's between him and Mike Smith, I think, for kind of the Oilers' individual player, unexpected success almost of the year. I mean, there's been lots of players like Larson who's come through, Josh Archibald, Jujar Kara, just going down the list here. Players who have done very, very well. But Puljujarvi he has become, if he wasn't, I don't know, was he a fan favorite? He was certainly a factional favorite before, where there was a large group of fans who even when he left the team, still liked the guy. And I was in that number. I always liked him and hoped he would come back. But now he's become just a total fan favorite, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, he's much fun to watch, right? I mean,
Yeah, smiling away.
the facial expressions and the body language and the helmet that doesn't fit properly, and and the goofy grin and that effort level. I mean, what's not to like when you got that guy digging in the corner, digging out pucks for McDavid and Draisaitl? It was actually that line was better tonight with Puljujarvi on it than it had been on Saturday with Yamamoto on it, to my eye. So,
Yes, a slightly different opponent, but maybe,
mhm.
but yeah.
Yes.
I don't think we've seen an athlete smile so much since Magic Johnson was throwing alley-oop passes to James Worthy, Bruce. I mean, he's so emphatic too in his excitement. It's it's uh it's his enthusiasm is contagious, as the saying goes. Bruce, bad thing.
Yeah, I got to go with not just in tonight's lineup, but generally the absence of a right shot centerman that the Oilers can count on to win defensive zone faceoffs. And tonight it burned them in the third period when it was 4-2, and in a space of 1 minute, the Oilers lost cleanly lost four consecutive faceoffs on the right defensive face-off circle where they had a left-handed center on his wrong side, twice Draisaitl, twice Nugent Hopkins, never a righty. And all four times they lost, I believe all four face-off losses led to a shot, or at least some kind of shot attempt right away because the Vancouver had such a clean possession of the puck. And after the second one, I get a little fidgety when the playoff berth is on the line. I think just take care of business, win those draws, get those pucks out, all those details. Well, the second one, I was agitated. After the third one, and Koskinen made a difficult save on a deflection, I was very agitated, and I was saying to my wife about how the Oilers need to win one of these. I can't remember what adjective I used, but you can fill in the blank face-offs. And when you
Blankety
know it,
blank.
they lose the fourth in a row, and bam, this one's in the net. Boom! I'm not happy at that moment, thinking, man, if this team has one weakness, that's a weakness, right? Maybe it's a small weakness, but every once in a while, it's going to cost you a goal, and it did here. And not at a particularly great time, although Vancouver didn't have a lot in the tank at that point. But I just see it as a weakness, and cleanly losing four in a row, with JT Miller twice beating Draisaitl and Horvat twice beating Nugent Hopkins, and not even being able to tie it up or have a scramble draw or anything on any of them. And it's just a detail that I think Ken Holland may have to put on a shopping list this summer is find a righty D man that can at least saw off in the circle. He's got Gaetan Haas who got sat out tonight, but Haas has
Banged up.
never. Oh yeah, okay. Never
Apparently,
impressed
yeah.
anyone as being a face-off whiz, though. I don't think at any time.
Yeah, I was just checking Dylan Holloway. He's a lefty though. So
Mm.
I mean they have McLeod and Holloway, these two very promising young centers coming up,
Yep.
and both of them are lefties. So I just think Leon Draisaitl, he's like that maybe that batter who takes some strikes to lull the pitcher into a sense of complacency so he can slam that ball out of there at the
Hmm.
right moment. Because that's when Leon has to win faceoffs, he's pretty good
Yeah.
winning them.
No.
So
No.
I'm not
Normally, yeah.
in the playoffs. We'll see how that works out. My bad thing. I don't know if this is a bad thing or a good thing, but the Oilers have 4 games left against the Canucks. So I'll start with the good side of it. The good side of it is that it's 4 games that, fingers crossed, the Canucks, they've lost a lot of their dirty players, and it might be good to play games that have less intensity and less. And I'm with you. Like, I'm not trying to put the Canucks down here by
Mhm.
saying that they were less ferocious. They were intense and they battled hard, but it wasn't a ferocious game like we've seen against Montreal and Calgary, teams like that. So that's okay. But on the other hand, I just wonder about like playing those softer games heading into playoffs. How's that going to work out? I guess in the end, it's probably not that bad a thing at all. It's probably a good thing. But it just struck me it's not going to be that much fun to watch, maybe, and it might not necessarily be good for the Oilers. Although it certainly gives them a chance to rest some players, and I hope we'll see that.
2 games at Montreal to break the chain. They have all this week, 4 in a
Sheesh.
row with Vancouver. Then they fly to Montreal for 2, and they end up at home again against Vancouver.
Did
So yeah,
Winnipeg
we
play
might
tonight,
we
by
might
the
see
way?
changes, and now that they've clinched, I think we might see a little bit of a change. A new wind in the sail of Dave Tippett for these next few games. And I mean, honestly, they've clinched second. Winnipeg lost again tonight. They
They
to
did.
Ottawa. They gave
Oh.
up. They were tied with 90 seconds left, and they gave one up. So they got no points. So they're tied with Montreal. So now, I mean,
Oh,
it's
we're gonna play
completely
the
out of
Habs.
Edmonton's hands. It could be the Habs. It probably will be because Winnipeg. I mean, they've lost 7 straight in regulation. And they've just lost their way, and they
And
lost
the
a couple big
Montreal beat
players.
Toronto.
Yeah, yeah.
Frack.
Cole Caulfield scored in overtime. First 2 career goals in overtime, consecutive games. How's that? Haven't seen it yet, but it was
No three on
pretty
three in the
pretty
playoffs, Bruce.
compelling start for his career. What's that? No 3-on-3.
Three
No,
on
you're
three
right.
in the playoffs. Yeah, I just come on, Winnipeg, wake up, wake the frack up.
I
I
want
do
to
not
wake
want to
up
play.
too much, though. I mean, we want them to come into the playoffs cold. So I don't know
But
how.
if they don't play the
Just
Oilers, Bruce,
yeah.
but you want the Leafs to sweep them in four? Is that
No, well,
no? I
that's the
want.
thing, right? I want you want them to get back into third, but somehow get cold again by the end. Anyway, I just they're going to play
Well,
who they're going to play. Edmonton's taking care of business, and they'll have to take care of business once the playoff starts. And it's looking more and more like Montreal.
as Dave Tippett says repeatedly, the team cannot worry about these kinds of things. They will play who they play,
Yeah.
and it will. What is coming has already been written. We just don't know it yet. It's not. We haven't seen the words. So we'll see what happens, and the owners will just take care of their own business, and we'll see where it all goes. What's your number?
My number is 11-0, and that's the collective score this year in all situations where Edmonton's playing against the other team that's pulled their goalie. Edmonton's now up to 11 empty net goals on the season, even as we hear occasional complaints about their inability to hit the empty net. They've done so 11 times. But more impressively than that, they have not given up a single goal when the other team has 6 attackers and are throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, on the net, trying to get the goal that'll either tie the game or get them back in the game. And Edmonton is so far through 50 games and something over 20 minutes of playing against the other team's sort of 6-on-5 power play, and they've killed every second of that. And that's one of the reasons why you see some pretty good plus minuses on the Oilers. Darnell Nurse, as the extreme example, has been on the ice for all of those goals, so he's plus 11 in empty
Just
net
because
goals
of
alone,
that. Jeez.
right?
Goals plus minus. So
Well,
good,
I
Bruce.
mean, yeah, it's a weakness, and yet, you know what? As a
Still good.
fan, I love empty net goals. The Oilers are 10-0 in those games. They got 2 empty netters in the same game here Saturday. Otherwise, it's one at a time, all wins. And I'm particularly impressed with that zero. I mean, that the goalie, the defenseman, everybody's doing their job. And a couple times they got somebody missed a shot that might have tied it or whatever, but they've got the job done. McDavid, I think, is plus 9. Draisaitl and Archibald, who's the regular 5-on-6 forward, uh, they're both plus 8. And Archibald, he got another point tonight. He had 2 on Saturday, 1 tonight. He's had 10 since he's been with the Oilers, points on empty net goals. And he's only got like 30, 3 points or something as an Oiler, but he sure specializes in those goalie out plays. And in some respects, they're cheap goals, and in other respects, they're you got to win the puck, you got to get it into a position where you can shoot it, and then you got to hit the net. Like there's things that have to be done to get those goals, and they're winning those battles, and they're getting the pucks out, and they're putting them in the net. So
Jim Matheson was saying today he thinks the Oilers, that protecting Archibald in the expansion draft
very
is a
possible. If they
must.
go
Is a
7-3.
must do. I think they're going to do that. I think that they're
Mhm.
going to go with 7 forwards, and
Mhm.
they have to protect Puljujarvi.
Yep.
So they'll be protecting 6, 7 forwards. So there's lots of room to protect a player like Archibald. It's not a stretch to think it will be him.
Hmm.
Bruce, that stat was one of the most McCurdy-esque stats of the year. I want to
Thank you.
congratulate you on that. It's a stat that hardly anyone would think of but you, but is a very significant and illuminating statistic. And I want to give you also credit for berating the Oilers for missing over empty net shots over the years, because I think you were leading the charge and
Well,
being
I've said it. Yeah, it's a
frustrated on
pain.
that count. And since you were regularly voicing on this podcast, that seemed to move the needle on this thing, and they're hitting the net all
Bear
the
it
time.
down. They've been bearing down. Well, 11-0, and when the Oilers have their goalie out, they've actually outscored the other team 3-2 this year. Unfortunately, none of the three was an actual tying goal. I always pull them back close, but not every tying goal. But they've outscored the other team with their goalie out, and they've crushed the other team when the opponents have pulled their goalie. So they've really added to their goal differential in empty net situations. But what they've done best of anything this year is win games and win them in regulation. And one way to win a game in regulation is to hang on to a 1-goal lead down the stretch, and they've been doing it.
Well, the Oilers are a very good team, and this is what happens when you're a very good team. My number, Bruce, is 75%, and that's Mike Smith didn't play tonight, but I'm still pulling out a stat from him. His winning percentage this year is 75%. And the reason I'm bringing it up is I was curious about how he was doing it against his own age group this year. Goalies who started the year 38 years old, and I'm just looking for my story here on it. Had it up a second ago. 38 years old at the start of the year. And how does he compare to other goalies that particular age in that year? Not every old goalie, for instance, but that year. And he's at 18 wins, 6 losses. Now, this doesn't count as 2 overtime losses,
Right.
which aren't kind of officially counted as losses. I don't really know. It's kind of vague. So
It's
modern goalies have a little bit of an advantage in terms of this stat
get
because
more wins.
they get more wins in overtime. That counts, but their losses aren't officially counted. So keep that in mind. And I'm not saying he's had the best ever for sure year of a goalie his age, but he's had one of them because his winning percentages of 75%. The only other goalie who's equaled that was Gump Worsley in 67-68, 21 wins and 7 losses for 75%. Jerry Cheevers, 78-79, 72%. And Johan Hedberg in 2011-12, I think he was with Pittsburgh,
Wow.
17-7 for
Moose.
71%. The other goalies in the top 10, Ed Belfour, George Hainsworth, Roberto Luongo, Curtis Joseph, Sean Burke, Johnny Bauer. So, Mike, Bruce, these are very illustrious goalies, other than Johan Hedberg. These are all goalies. Many of them are in the Hall of Fame. And Mike Smith that is an incredible achievement. What we've seen this year from this goalie is historic. It has been it's been fantastic. And the good news is, even better news is, a lot of those goalies, that wasn't their last good year. They had a lot of good years after that. I mean, Gump Worsley was going strong until he was 42. Johnny Bauer, what was his last? I think he's 43, his last year. Really good year, if I'm not mistaken. Jacques Plante, who isn't on that list, had 4 really good years out,
Yeah.
39. Dominic Hasek, 41 when he was 40, 41, and 42. For Ken Holland in Detroit, he had some really good years. And looking at those, I hadn't really dug into how goalies in their 40s do. And it's a small and select group of goalies. But it does seem like goalies who are in that group can put together one or two or three good years. So Mike Smith has his first, I'm going to say, really great year for an old goalie after two pretty mediocre years where he was banged up and injured. So there's no saying that he's going to be like these other guys. But based on performance, Bruce, I'm now convinced. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. But at this moment, he really does deserve a new contract next year based on performance. It would be, and looking at
They got
actuarial
one
tables,
somewhere.
of NHL goalies, yeah, most of them are done. The vast majority of them are done. But there is this little group. Maybe he's one of them. Maybe he can have one or two or three more really good years. Stranger things have happened. Goalies even older than Mike Smith would be at 41 in his 41-year-old season have done well. So there you
Well,
have it.
you mentioned the great Jacques Plante,
Yeah.
who retired in 1965 at the age of 36. Came out of retirement to play in St. Louis, 1968-69. So after coming out of 3 years out of retirement, he came back to post a save percentage of .940 and a goals against average of 196, aged 40. He turned 40 during the year, so he's basically 1 year older than Mike Smith is this year. And they won the Vezina Trophy in St. Louis. And at that time, 940 was the best save percentage ever recorded. This is new data. They've gone
Yeah.
back and they've actually filled in save percentages back to 1955. They used to only have them from about 1983. And then he broke his own record at age 42, playing for Toronto of all teams in 1970-71. 944 save percentage. It remains the all-time record for save percentage by a goalie. 42-year-old Jake the Snake, Jacques Plante, who, of course, after that would go on to play eventually with the Edmonton Oilers.
And I remember him. I remember
Yeah,
watching him live.
yeah, me too.
He was a charismatic player, even then. Like Mike Smith, charismatic, handling that puck, moving that puck, right? So confident in doing that. Mike Smith
Yeah, he
really is
was
a
famous for
throwback.
that. He was a really early pioneer in coming out and playing the puck and stuff. So that's something I really noticed in tonight's game. Right from the get-go, there was a play maybe 30, 40 seconds in. The puck came in basically through the hash marks to Koskinen's left, and it went up against the end boards. And you could see the defenseman, Edmonton defenseman, hesitate for a second, and Koskinen didn't come out to play it. And I said to my wife, Smith would have been all over that puck. The defenseman would have peeled off, and he would have bumped it off to one or the other of them. And Koskinen, being not being Mike Smith, did the conservative thing and stayed in the blue paint. But that totally changes the equation for the defenseman. And I am convinced that that's one of the reasons that Dave Tippett has gone so heavily, like 3-1 games for Smith. In the last 10 games, Smith started 8 of them. Koskinen, this was just his second start in the last 10 games. And he was great in his other starts. It's not like he's not playing well, but it changes the way the Edmonton Oilers play. And I think Tippett puts great value on that, and I can understand why he does.
And to give credit to Tippett, I mean, I think the reason Mike Smith's here is because of Dave Tippett. And
Yeah.
it's here last year, here again this year. I don't think most teams would have gone back to Smith after the season that he had, but Tippett obviously really believes in that goalie, and it's his belief has paid off. And so Dave Tippett deserves a lot of credit just for that decision alone. With Mike Smith this year, just like Ken Holland does with his patience. A lot of people like making fun of the old hockey guy and the connected hockey guy, but his hockey savvy was a huge part of keeping Puljujarvi on this team. I think his patience and having been through that experience a number of times in the past. So good. Tippett and Holland both deserve credit for
I read on Twitter
those
though
two
that
players.
I read on Twitter that Mike Smith deserves all the credit for Mike Smith's good season, and Ken Holland deserves none of it because he made a bad decision that Mike Smith somehow was able to overcome and make turn into a good decision.
Maybe they
Uh,
knew something we didn't, Holland and Tippett. Is that possible, Bruce? Could that ever happen in this?
yeah, maybe they learned about the conditioning program that Smith was undertaking last summer to work on his core strength to stop him from doing all those belly flops that he used to do. He's actually playing a different
He
style of net
is.
minding this year, and maybe somebody had some inside knowledge on it that those of us on Oilers Twitter may not have quite had access to.
Although
Just a wild guess.
they did try to sign Markstrom. I mean, if we're completely honest here, like,
Well, yeah, no, I understand it was Plan B or Plan C, but he had it
still,
up his sleeve, and he went and got we've talked about it many times. Tyson Barrie and Mike Smith kind of as a package. And there's Tyson Barrie scoring a big goal tonight and adding to his point total, and I mean, Holland's done some things right. Tippett's done some things right. Are they the best in the business? Either one of them? Probably not, but they're not the worst.
yeah. Well, we'll see. Ken Holland, is he still the best in the business? He's got something to prove. Let's put it that way. But he has been the best in the business. So we'll see if he can crank it up again. Bruce, let's leave it there. We got another game tomorrow night. So
We sure do, and then another
thanks.
one on Thursday, and another
Yeah,
one on Saturday, and we're grinding them out now because these are, in a sense, meaningless games or
right.
marginally meaningful games, and it's more about individual stories now. And we'll see. Does Evan Bouchard get in the lineup? Are they ever going to
For sure.
use? Are they ever going to use the third goalie? Are they going to find a way to get um, find a little bit of ice time? For this guy or that. Tyler Ennis got a game tonight, for example, and had mostly good moments with a couple of defensive issues, a typical Tyler Ennis game, but he had lots of
Yes,
energy and hustle, and I thought he was all right. And that's what you want. You want all these guys to have, a little bit of taste of the action because you might need them in the playoffs.
you might, including Stalock. Bruce, thanks for talking tonight.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.